Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the wide window of the orbital defense platform, watching space itself tear open. The sight made his stomach twist. Massive black ships poured through the rip in reality like insects from a broken nest. Each vessel stretched longer than 3 city blocks and bristled with weapons that could crack moons. How many? He asked without turning around. Lieutenant Carol Webb checked her screens. 1,200 ships, sir. Maybe more coming through. Jake had served in space for 30 years. He had seen pirates, rebels, and corporate wars. Nothing had prepared him for this. The alien fleet moved with perfect order, forming attack patterns that human military schools only dreamed about. The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect English, cold and mechanical. Humans of the third planet, you will receive our representative in 1 hour. Prepare your leaders. Jake turned to his crew. Send word to Earth. Tell President Santos that our guests have arrived. An hour later, the alien shuttle landed in the main bay. The creature that stepped out stood 8 feet tall and looked like it was made of blue crystal. Light moved through its body in patterns that hurt to watch. When it spoke, its voice came from speakers built into the walls. I am Vexstar, voice of the Zeltharian Empire. Your species has violated galactic law. You have spread across 47 star systems without permission. You build weapons without oversight. You resist all attempts at peaceful contact. Captain. Lisa Hayes stepped forward. She had spent years training for first contact, but this felt nothing like the simulations. We didn't know about galactic law. Our explorers found empty systems. We thought we were alone. The crystal being made a sound like breaking glass. Ignorance excuses nothing. The Zeltharian Empire has ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. We maintain order among 400 species. Your expansion threatens that order. What do you want from us? President Santos asked through the video link from Earth. Complete surrender. Your military will be dissolved. Your weapons destroyed. Your people will serve the Empire as a client species. You have 72 hours to accept these terms. Lisa felt her blood turn cold. And if we refuse? Then you will be removed. Every human world will be sterilized. Your species will become a memory. This is not negotiation. This is mercy. The alien's image flickered as data flowed through its crystalline body. We have eliminated 43 species for lesser violations. Your rapid expansion and weapons development mark you as a Type 7 threat. Only complete submission can save you. Jake studied the tactical displays showing the alien fleet. Their ships carried energy weapons that could burn through any armor humanity had ever built. Their numbers alone would overwhelm Earth's defenses in hours. You said you've destroyed other species, Lisa said. What gives you that right? Power gives us that right. Order gives us that right. The weak serve or die. This is the way of the galaxy. President Santos spoke from the screen. We need time to consider your offer. You have 72 hours. Use them wisely. The alien turned and walked back to its shuttle without another word. Jake watched it leave, then looked at the massive fleet hanging in space beyond the platform. Get me a secure line to Dr. Bobby Clark, he told his communications officer, minutes later. Clark's face appeared on a private screen. The scientist looked tired with dark circles under his eyes. He had been working day and night on classified projects that most of the military didn't even know existed. Admiral, I saw the alien fleet on the sensors. How bad is it? They want complete surrender. In 3 days, if we refuse, they'll wipe out humanity. Clark was quiet for a long moment. How many ships do they have? 1,200 confirmed, possibly more. Each one could destroy a city. I need to make some calls, Clark said. There might be another option. What kind of option? The kind that no one wants to use unless the world is ending. The screen went dark. Jake turned back to the window where the alien fleet waited like vultures. Their ships formed perfect geometric patterns, showing a level of discipline that spoke of countless victories on Earth. President Santos sat in the emergency bunker beneath the White House. The Joint Chiefs surrounded the table, their faces grim General Kate Thompson spread tactical reports across the surface. Our best estimate gives us maybe 6 hours of fighting before they break through, she said. They have weapons we can't match and numbers we can't overcome. What about the colonies? Santos asked. We've sent evacuation orders, but most won't be able to escape in time. The aliens are already moving ships to block the major trade routes. Defense Secretary Paul Martinez looked up from his tablet. There might be another way. Project Nightfall. The room fell silent. Even the president looked confused. I've never heard of Project Nightfall, Santos said. It's been classified above presidential level for 30 years, Martinez explained. Only a handful of people know it exists. Dr. Clark has been working on it since the early days of our expansion. What does it do? I don't know. I just know that if humanity ever faced extinction, we were supposed to give Clark whatever he needed. Santos stared at the ceiling. 3 days to surrender or die. 3 days to decide if humanity would kneel or fight. She thought about her children, about the millions of families across human space who had no idea what was coming. Get me Dr. Clark, she said. While the president made her calls, Captain Steve Rogers prepared his ship for a desperate mission. The UES Falcon was one of humanity's newest stealth vessels, designed to slip past enemy sensors undetected. Sir, our orders don't make sense, said his pilot, Lieutenant Danny Carter. They want us to capture an alien ship? That's what the orders say. Command thinks we need to learn more about their technology before the fighting starts. The crew looked nervous. Capturing an alien vessel seemed impossible when facing a fleet of 1,200 ships. But Rogers had served under worse odds. During the corporate wars, he had led boarding actions against ships 3 times the size of his own. Listen up, he told his team. This isn't about glory or heroics. This is about survival. If we can learn how their ships work, maybe we can find a weakness. Back on the orbital platform, Jake watched more alien ships arrive through the space. Rift, the fleet now numbered over 1,500 vessels. Each new arrival made humanity's chances smaller. His communication officer looked up from her station. Sir, I'm picking up transmissions from the alien fleet. They're talking to each other. Can you translate it? Not the language, but I can analyze the patterns. They're coordinating positions for a siege formation. Whatever they're planning, they expect it to take time. Jake nodded. The aliens weren't in a hurry. They had time to position their forces perfectly to make sure no human ship could escape when the killing started. Down on Earth, families gathered around news screens, watching reports about the alien fleet. Most people still didn't understand how bad things really were. The government had told them about first contact, but not about the ultimatum. In the underground research facility in Colorado, Dr. Clark worked frantically to prepare systems that had never been tested on this scale. Project Nightfall represented 30 years of theoretical work, built in secret across dozens of hidden laboratories. He looked at the quantum entanglement array, a device that most scientists said was impossible. If it worked, it could change everything. If it failed, humanity would face the aliens with conventional weapons and lose badly. The countdown had begun. 72 hours to choose between slavery and death. But Jake Morrison, Lisa Hayes, and Bobby Clark were already working on a third option. An option that would change the galaxy forever. The 72 hours passed like minutes. President Santos stood before the Emergency Council, her decision made. The alien demand for surrender had been rejected 6 hours ago. Now the killing would begin. All civilian transports are to head for the inner colonies, she announced. Military forces will buy them as much time as possible. Admiral Jake Morrison watched from the orbital platform as the Zeltharian fleet began to move. Their ships spread out like a net, cutting off escape. Routes from Earth, the precision of their movement spoke of thousands of years of practice. Incoming transmission from the alien flagship, Lieutenant Carol Webb reported. The crystal being Vexstar appeared on the main screen. Its voice carried no emotion, no anger at humanity's refusal. Your time has ended. Your species has chosen extinction. We will begin with your colonies to demonstrate the price of defiance. The screen went dark. Minutes later, long-range sensors detected the alien fleet splitting into smaller groups. Each group headed toward a different human world. Commander Ryan Kelly stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance in the Proxima Centauri system. His ship was one of humanity's most advanced battleships, equipped with railguns that could punch holes through asteroids. It felt small and fragile compared to the alien vessels approaching his position. 30 alien ships coming through the jump point, his tactical officer reported. They're bigger than our intelligence estimated. Ryan had fought in 3 wars during his career. He had never faced odds like this. 30 ships against his single battleship and the handful of defense platforms orbiting Proxima Station. All stations, this is Vengeance. We hold the line here. No retreat, no surrender. The alien ships open fire while still hundreds of thousands of miles away. Beams of pure energy cross space faster than human weapons could track. The first blast hit Proxima Station, and Ryan watched a structure that housed 50,000 people simply disappear. Return fire, he shouted. The Vengeance launched every missile it carried. Nuclear warheads that could crack mountains struck. The alien ships and barely scratched their hulls. The enemy weapons cut through human armor like paper. Sir, we're taking heavy damage, his engineering officer called out. The armor is failing on all decks. Ryan gripped his command chair as another energy beam tore through his ship. Half the crew was already dead. The battle had lasted 10 minutes. All hands, abandon ship. Get to the escape pods. As the Vengeance died around him, Ryan stayed at his post, firing the last working weapons until the ship broke apart. His sacrifice bought the transport ships 30 more minutes to escape. Similar battles raged across human space. At New Boston, the colony on Kepler 442b, Governor Sarah Mitchell watched alien ships appear in orbit above her world. The planet had 2 million colonists and no military defenses. This is Governor Mitchell of New Boston. We are a civilian colony. We have no weapons. The response came in the form of energy beams that turned the atmosphere into fire. The aliens burned the entire planet from orbit, killing every living thing on the surface. The attack took 6 hours. When it ended, New Boston was a dead rock. Floating in space. The news reached Earth within hours. 2 million people killed without warning. 12 other colonies reported similar attacks. The Zeltharian Empire was showing humanity the price of resistance. In his underground laboratory, Dr. Bobby Clark worked faster than he had ever worked before. Project Nightfall required precise calibration of quantum entanglement fields across thousands of light years. One mistake would make the weapon useless. How much longer? General K. Thompson asked from behind him. 48 hours minimum, Clark replied without looking up from his calculations. The quantum matrix needs to stabilize before we can activate the main sequence. We might not have 48 hours. The aliens are destroying our colonies one by one. Clark finally turned around. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his voice was steady. Then we'd better hope our defenses can hold out long enough. Above ground, the first alien ships entered Earth's solar system. They moved slowly, taking time to destroy everything in their path. The outer defensive stations died one by one, their crews fighting to the last man. Captain Steve Rogers and his stealth ship, Falcon, had managed to reach the edge of alien space during the chaos. His mission to capture an enemy vessel had seemed impossible, but the aliens were focused on their attack runs. There, his pilot Danny Carter pointed at the scanner. Single ship, separated from the main fleet? The alien vessel was massive, at least 10 times the size of the Falcon. But it was alone, conducting some kind of survey of a destroyed human outpost. Take us in quiet, Rogers ordered. We need to board that ship and get back before they notice we're here. The Falcon crept closer, using every stealth system humanity had developed. The alien ship showed no sign of detecting them. When they were close enough, Rogers led a boarding party through the docking tube. The inside of the alien ship was unlike anything they had seen. The corridors were made of the same crystal material as the Ambassador, glowing with internal light. Strange symbols covered every surface. This way, Rogers whispered, following his scanner toward what looked like the command center. they found computer terminals that responded to touch, displaying information in flowing alien script. Rogers couldn't read it, but he could copy it. His team downloaded everything they could find before the aliens realized they had been boarded. The escape was desperate. Alien security forces made of living metal chased them through the corridors. Rogers lost 2 men getting back to the Falcon, but they escaped with a treasure of enemy intelligence. Back on Earth, the information from Rogers' mission reached the analysis teams within hours. Dr. Ellen Murphy, Earth's top computer specialist, worked to crack the alien data systems. Their ships are controlled by quantum computers, she reported to Admiral Morrison. But they use a centralized command network. If we could disrupt that network, we'd blind their entire fleet, Morrison finished. How long to figure out their communication protocols? Maybe 24 hours if I'm lucky. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing alien forces closing on Earth. They had maybe 36 hours before the final assault began. Every hour mattered now. In space around Earth, the remaining human fleet prepared for the last battle. Admiral Lisa Hayes commanded the defense from the battleship UES Defiance. She had 60 ships against more than 300 aliens. All captains, this is Hayes. We're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to buy time for the evacuation. Every minute we hold them back saves lives. The human ships spread out in a defensive shell around Earth. Mining ships and cargo haulers had been armed with whatever weapons the shipyards could install. They wouldn't last long against professional warships, but they would fight. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster led the ground defense preparations as alien landing ships approached Earth's atmosphere. Her forces had been given experimental weapons, pulled from research labs, including energy rifles that had never been field tested. Remember, we're not fighting to win, she told her troops. We're fighting to give our people time to reach the shelters. The first alien troops landed outside major cities. They moved in perfect formation, wearing armor that shrugged off human bullets. Their weapons turned buildings to dust with single shots, but humans had one advantage the aliens didn't expect. They fought with desperate fury, knowing their families were behind them. Colonel Nick Barnes led urban combat teams through the ruins of Chicago, using guerrilla tactics to slow the alien advance. They're too organized, he reported to Foster. They expect resistance to follow military patterns. Hit-and-run attacks confuse them. The information was passed to resistance fighters around the world. Humans began using tactics the aliens had never encountered. They hid in sewers, attacked from buildings, and disappeared before the enemy could respond. Meanwhile, Dr. Clark watched his quantum matrices slowly stabilize. The weapon was almost ready, but the aliens were getting closer to his facility. If they found the laboratory before he could fire, humanity would have no options left. Sir, alien forces are 12 miles out, his security chief reported. Our surface defenses won't hold them for long. Clark looked at his calculations one more time. The weapon would work, but the power requirements meant he would only get one shot. If he missed, if the targeting was wrong, humanity would die. How much longer? General Thompson asked. 6 hours to full charge. 4 hours if I push the system beyond safe limits. Thompson checked her watch. The aliens would reach the facility in 3 hours. Push it, she said, above them. The battle for Earth's skies raged on. Human fighters dove at alien ships like angry wasps, their missiles barely scratching the enemy hulls. But every small victory, every alien ship damaged or destroyed, bought more time for the weapon below. The quantum entanglement web that Dr. Clark had spent 30 years building was almost ready. Hidden transmitters on every human ship, every trade vessel, every exploration probe had spread quantum-linked particles across thousands of star systems. Soon, those particles would become the most deadly weapon the galaxy had ever seen. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Bobby Clark watched the quantum matrices reach critical power levels. The facility around him hummed with energy that made the air itself feel heavy. 30 years of secret research had led to this moment. Power. At 60% and climbing, reported his assistant, Dr. Helen Park. The quantum entanglement web is responding across all sectors. Clark studied the readouts that showed the network of quantum particles he had spent decades spreading throughout the galaxy. Every human ship had carried them unknowingly. Every trade mission, every exploration vessel, every diplomatic contact had left behind microscopic transmitters linked to this moment above ground. The battle for the facility raged. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster watched alien forces advance through her defensive lines. Their crystal armor deflected everything her troops could throw at them, and their energy weapons turned human soldiers to ash. "Fall back to the secondary positions," she ordered through her radio. "We need to buy the lab another 2 hours." The aliens moved with mechanical precision, advancing step by step through the mountain forests. They had encountered human resistance on dozens of worlds now, but they had never faced defenders this desperate. Every tree, every rock, every building became a fortress that had to be taken by force. Colonel Nick Barnes led his urban warfare specialists in hit-and-run attacks against the alien flanks. His men used the terrain like their ancestors had fought in these same mountains centuries ago. They struck fast and disappeared, leaving the aliens to advance into empty positions. "They're learning our tactics," Barnes reported to Foster. "But they're still moving too slow. We can hold them for maybe 90 minutes. In the underground command center, General Kate Thompson coordinated the surface defense while monitoring Clark's progress. She had fought in 3 wars during her career, but this felt different. This time, humanity's survival depended on a weapon no one fully understood. "Doctor, what exactly happens when you fire this thing?" she asked. Clark looked up from his calculations, his face pale from exhaustion. "The quantum entanglement network creates an instantaneous connection between every particle we've spread and every target they've attached to. When I activate the weapon, every Zeltharian ship in the galaxy will be hit at the same moment." "Hit with what?" "Quantum disruption. Their ships use energy fields to hold their matter together. The weapon breaks those fields." Thompson stared at him. "You're talking about destroying their entire fleet at once, not just their fleet. Every piece of Zeltharian technology. Every ship, every station, every device that uses their quantum energy systems." The general felt a chill run down her spine. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Based on our intelligence, maybe 50,000 vessels across their empire. Plus space stations, orbital platforms, research facilities, ... Double quotes. Thompson was quiet for a long moment. "How many lives?" Clark had asked himself the same question for years. "I don't know. The Zeltharian Empire spans thousands of systems, billions of beings, maybe trillions. And you can kill them all with one button? To save humanity?" "Yes." Above them, the alien assault reached the outer perimeter of the facility. Foster's defenders had been pushed back to their final positions around the main antenna array. The massive dish that would transmit Clark's weapon signal stood exposed on the mountainside, an obvious target for enemy fire. "They're targeting the antenna," Foster reported. "If they destroy it, can you still fire the weapon?" "No," Clark answered immediately. "The antenna focuses the quantum signal. Without it, the weapon is useless." Foster looked at her remaining troops. They had started with 300 soldiers. Now she counted maybe 50 still fighting. The aliens would reach the antenna in 30 minutes. "All units, this is Foster. We hold this position no matter what. If that antenna falls, Earth falls with it." The men and women around her checked their weapons one more time. They were fighting with experimental energy rifles that often overheated after a few shots. Their armor was ceramic plates designed to stop bullets, not alien energy beams. But they were the last line between humanity and extinction. In space above Earth, Admiral Lisa Hayes commanded the final defense from her battleship, UES Defiance. The alien fleet had broken through the outer system defenses and now surrounded the planet. Her 60 ships faced over 400 enemy vessels. "Ma'am, they're demanding we surrender," her communications officer reported. "Tell them to try and take us," Hayes replied. The space battle had been raging for 6 hours. Human ships used every trick they could think of, ramming attacks, nuclear mines, even crashing damaged vessels into alien formations for every human. Ship destroyed, they had managed to take down 3 aliens. But the numbers were still against them. Captain Janet Stone commanded a wing of fighter craft that dove between the massive alien vessels like insects around giants. Her pilots had given up trying to penetrate the enemy armor. Instead, they targeted sensor arrays and communication equipment, trying to blind and confuse the alien fleet. Dragon Leader, this is Stone. I'm seeing some kind of interference in their formation patterns. They're having trouble coordinating. Hayes smiled grimly. The intelligence from Captain Rogers' captured alien data was paying off. Dr. Ellen Murphy had cracked enough of their communication protocols to introduce viruses into their network. Keep hitting their communications, Hayes ordered. Every ship they can't coordinate with is one less gun pointed at Earth. Down in the laboratory, Clark watched the power levels climb past 80%. The quantum matrices were approaching the critical threshold where he could fire the weapon. But the calculations showed something that made his hands shake. Doctor, the targeting system is showing massive overlap, Dr. Park reported. The quantum particles have spread beyond the Zeltharian Empire. Clark studied the readouts with growing horror. The particles had attached themselves to any technology that used similar energy patterns. That included not just Zeltharian ships, but also the vessels of their subject species, their trade partners, their client civilizations. How widespread is the contamination? He asked. Park ran the calculations twice before answering. 17 different species, maybe 23 star systems beyond Zeltharian space. How many innocent civilians? I can't calculate it exactly. Hundreds of billions, maybe more. Clark stared at the activation console. One button press would save humanity by committing genocide on a scale never seen in galactic history. He thought about his children, about the millions of humans dying in space above, about the colonies that had already been burned from orbit. General Thompson appeared beside him. Doctor, the surface defenses are failing. You need to fire now. The weapon will kill more than just our enemies, Clark said quietly. Billions of innocent beings will die. And if you don't fire, billions of humans will die instead. Clark looked at the tactical displays showing alien forces closing on the antenna. Foster's troops were down to their last ammunition. In space, Hayes' fleet was being systematically destroyed. This was humanity's only chance. On the surface, Foster led her final squad in defense of the antenna array. Alien troops had reached the base of the mountain and were climbing toward the transmission dish. Energy beams cut through the air around her position, turning rocks to molten glass. Target the lead units, she ordered her remaining soldiers. Make every shot count. The experimental energy rifles worked better than anyone had hoped, but they were running out of power cells. Foster watched her ammunition counter drop with each shot. When it reached 0, the aliens would take the antenna and humanity would face extinction with conventional weapons. Sergeant Mike Torres, one of her best soldiers, stood up from cover to get a clear shot at an alien officer. The enemy's return fire cut him in half, but his shot had found its mark. The alien formation hesitated for a moment, buying them precious seconds. Ma'am, they're flanking us from the east, reported Corporal Lisa Grant. We can't cover all approaches. Foster checked her watch. The lab needed 15 more minutes to reach full power. Her troops might last 5. In the underground facility, Clark made his decision. He had spent his entire career trying to protect humanity. Now he would save his species by destroying others. The moral weight of it felt like carrying a mountain. But the alternative was human extinction. Beginning final activation sequence, he announced. The quantum matrices powered up to 95%. Energy flowed through crystalline structures that had cost more than Earth's entire military budget. The weapon was almost ready. Dr. Park monitored the quantum entanglement network as it synchronized across the galaxy. All particles responding. Target lock established on 47,000 enemy vessels. Clark hesitated. Once he pressed the activation button, there would be no taking it back. Entire civilizations would simply cease to exist, but humanity would survive. Sir Alien? Forces have breached the perimeter, Foster's voice crackled through the radio. They're at the antenna base. Through the security cameras, Clark could see alien troops climbing the transmission tower. If they reached the top, they could destroy the focusing array that made his weapon possible. Doctor, you have to fire. Now, General Thompson said urgently. Clark placed his hand on the activation control. The fate of the galaxy rested under his palm. Above ground, brave men and women dying to give him this chance. In space, the moment Dr. Bobby Clark pressed the activation button, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the quantum matrices released 30 years of stored energy in a single instant. The wave of destruction traveled faster than light, carried by quantum entanglement across impossible distances. In Earth's orbit, Admiral Lisa Hayes watched something that defied understanding. The massive Zeltharian fleet that had been destroying her ship simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not damaged. Gone. 400 alien vessels winked out of existence as if they had never been there at all. What just happened? Her tactical officer asked, staring at screens that now showed empty space where the enemy fleet had been. Hayes couldn't answer. She had seen ships destroyed before, seen them break apart or explode. This was different. The alien vessels hadn't been blown up, they had simply stopped existing. "Ma'am, I'm not reading any debris," reported her sensor operator. "No energy signatures, no wreckage, they're just gone." The silence on the bridge stretched for long minutes. Hayes had commanded warships for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like this. An entire enemy fleet had vanished without leaving a trace. Captain Helen Davis commanded the reconnaissance ship, UES Explorer, at the edge of what had been Zeltharian space. Her mission was to monitor alien reinforcements, but her sensors showed something impossible. "Captain, you need to see this," her science officer called out. Davis looked at the long-range scanner display, where once the readings had shown massive space stations and orbital cities. Now there was nothing. The Zeltharian home system, which had housed billions of beings for thousands of years, was empty. "Run the scan again," she ordered. "There must be an error." The second scan confirmed the first. Every artificial structure in the system had vanished. The planets remained, but every ship, every station, every piece of technology had simply ceased to exist. "Captain, I'm picking up similar readings from the neighboring systems," the sensor operator reported. "Everything's gone. The entire Zeltharian Empire just disappeared." Back on Earth, Dr. Clark stared at his monitoring equipment in growing horror. The quantum weapon had worked beyond his worst fears. The entanglement network had targeted not just Zeltharian ships, but everything that used similar technology. "Patterns. Doctor, what have we done?" Dr. Helen Park asked, her voice shaking as she read the sensor reports. Clark pulled up a galactic map that showed the scope of the destruction. Red zones marked where civilizations had existed just minutes before. The Zeltharian Empire covered thousands of star systems, but the weapon's effect had spread even further. The quantum particles attached to any technology that matched their energy signatures, he explained, his voice hollow. "Not just military targets, everything." General Kate Thompson joined them at the display. "How widespread?" 17 different species completely eliminated. 7 more partially affected. The weapon destroyed every artificial structure in approximately 3,000 star systems. The numbers were too large to comprehend. Clark had saved humanity by committing genocide on a scale that dwarfed anything in galactic history. Trillions of beings had died in an instant, their entire civilizations erased from existence. On the surface, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster and her surviving troops stared at the alien forces that had been attacking them. The Crystal Warriors had simply stopped moving. Their armor had turned gray and lifeless, and the beings inside had fallen to the ground. "Are they dead?" asked Sergeant Patricia Brown, one of the few soldiers still standing. Foster approached one of the fallen aliens carefully. The crystal being that had been shooting at her moments before now lay motionless, its body dark and cold. Whatever force had animated it was gone. "I think so," she said. "But I don't understand how." Similar scenes played out across Earth. Alien. Landing forces that had been advancing on major cities collapsed where they stood. Their weapons stopped working, their vehicles shut down, and their communication systems went silent. In space, the human fleet slowly regrouped around Earth. Admiral Hayes sent scout ships to investigate the areas where alien vessels had vanished. They found nothing, no debris, no energy readings, no sign that hundreds of warships had ever existed there. "This is Admiral Hayes to all ships," she broadcast. "Stand down from combat alert. The enemy fleet is gone." The words felt strange in her mouth. Wars were supposed to end with surrender or destruction, not with the enemy simply disappearing. Captain Steve Rogers brought his stealth ship back to Earth with the captured alien data. The intelligence teams had been analyzing the information when the quantum weapon fired. Now Dr. Ellen Murphy stared at her screens in confusion. "The alien data just went dead," she reported to Admiral Morrison. "Not corrupted or damaged. Just, empty, like the files never contained anything." Morrison studied the reports coming in from across human space. Every alien ship, every piece of Zeltharian technology had simply stopped existing. The enemy hadn't been defeated, they had been erased. "Get me a line to President Santos," he ordered. The president was in the emergency bunker, surrounded by advisors who looked as confused as everyone else. The war that had threatened to destroy humanity had ended in less than a minute, but no one understood how. "Ma'am, we're getting reports from all our colonies," said her chief of staff. "The alien attacks have stopped completely. Every enemy ship has just vanished." Santos felt relief and horror in equal measure. Humanity was safe, but at what cost? She thought about the briefings on Project Nightfall, the vague descriptions of a weapon that could target the entire enemy fleet. "Get me Dr. Clark," she ordered. When Clark's face appeared on the screen, Santos could see the weight of what he had done in his eyes. The scientist who had saved humanity looked like he had aged 10 years in the past hour. "Doctor, what exactly did your weapon do?" "It eliminated every piece of Zeltharian technology in the galaxy, ma'am. Every ship, every station, every device that used their energy systems." "How many people died?" Clark was quiet for a long moment. "Conservative estimates suggest several trillion beings across multiple species." "The weapon was more effective than we calculated?" The silence in the bunker was deafening. Santos had authorized the use of the weapon to save humanity, but she hadn't understood its true scope. No one had. Major Paul Wright led an exploration team into the Proxima Centauri system 3 days after the weapon fired. His mission was to assess the damage and look for survivors. What he found changed his understanding of warfare forever. The Zeltharian fleet that had destroyed Proxima Station was gone. But so was evidence of a dozen other civilizations that had lived in the region. Ancient space habitats that had existed for millions of years had vanished. Archaeological sites that contained the history of entire species had been erased. "Major, you need to see this," called his archaeologist, Dr. Susan Lee. She led him to what had been a museum ship, a vessel that preserved the cultural artifacts of a species called the Morden. The ship had contained art, literature, and historical records spanning 50,000 years. Now it was empty space. "The Morden were conquered by the Zeltharians 2,000 years ago," Lee explained. "They were forced to adapt Zeltharian technology to survive. When your weapon fired, it killed them too." Wright stared at the empty space where an entire culture's heritage had existed just days before. Were they trying to rebel against the Zeltharians? "According to our intelligence, yes. They were planning an uprising for next year. Your weapon saved them from slavery by killing them instead." The exploration team found similar evidence throughout the region. Species that had been forced to use Zeltharian technology, civilizations that had been working to overthrow their oppressors, rebels who had stolen alien equipment to fight for freedom, all had been eliminated along with their enemies. Back on Earth, the victory celebrations felt hollow. Humanity had won the greatest military victory in history, but the cost was beyond calculation. Clark's weapon had saved human civilization by destroying dozens of others. President Suntus addressed the nation from the White House, her words carefully chosen. Today, humanity faced extinction and survived. We mourn the loss of life that our survival required, but we will not apologize for choosing to live. The speech was broadcast across human space, but many colonies struggled with what they had learned. The weapon that saved them had committed genocide on an unimaginable scale. Some called it the greatest military victory ever achieved. Others called it the worst crime in galactic history. Dr. Clark retreated to his laboratory, unable to face the public attention. He had spent his career trying to protect humanity, and he had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. But the victory felt like the heaviest defeat he had ever suffered. General Thompson found him staring at the now silent quantum matrices. The weapon that had changed the galaxy was powered down, its work complete. Any regrets, Doctor? She asked. Clark considered the question carefully. If I had to choose again, knowing what I know now, I would still press that button. Humanity deserved to survive. But I'll carry the weight of what we destroyed for the rest of my life. What do we do now? Now, we live with what we've done, and we make sure it was worth the 5 years had passed since the day humanity saved itself by destroying half the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel UES Memorial, watching empty space where the great Seltharian capital had once existed. His hair had gone completely gray during those years, and his eyes held a weight that no amount of rest could cure. Still nothing on long-range sensors, reported his science officer, Lieutenant Danny Miller. No artificial signals, no energy. Signatures? It's like they never existed. Morrison nodded slowly. He had visited dozens of former alien worlds during the past 5 years, documenting what remained of the civilizations that Project Nightfall had erased. The job felt like cataloging ghosts. Take us to the next system, he ordered. The Morden had a research station there? Maybe we can salvage some of their historical records. The exploration of dead space had become humanity's strangest duty. President Santos had created the Memorial Fleet to preserve what little remained of the destroyed civilizations. It was the least they could do for the beings they had killed to save themselves. Dr. Bobby Clark rarely left his home anymore. The man who had saved humanity lived alone in a cabin in the mountains, far from the celebrations and monuments that bore his name. He spent his days reading about the species his weapon had destroyed, trying to understand what the galaxy had lost. Commander. Janet Stone found him there on a cold morning in October, sitting on his porch with a tablet full of alien poetry. She had been assigned to check on him regularly, though she never called it that. The Veltar had 47 different art forms, Clark said without looking up. They created sculptures from crystallized music. No one alive knows how they did it? Stone sat down beside him. You couldn't have known about them when you designed the weapon. I could have asked more questions. I could have demanded better intelligence before I built something that could erase entire cultures. The Zeltharians were going to kill every human in the galaxy. You saved us. Clark finally looked at her, his eyes red from sleepless nights. Did I? Or did I just make us into something worse than they were? The guilt had eaten at him for 5 years. Every night he dreamed about the aliens he had never met, the children, who had died because their toys used Zeltharian energy cells, the artists who had vanished while creating beauty that no one would ever see again on Earth. The next generation was growing up in the shadow of humanity's victory. Young people like engineer Danny Carter worked to build research stations in the empty regions of space, hoping to learn from what little evidence remained of the dead civilizations. We found something, Carter reported to Admiral Morrison over the communication link. It's a data beacon, automated. Looks like it was launched just before the weapon fired. Morrison felt his heart race. In 5 years of searching, they had found very little intact technology from the destroyed species. Most of it had been contaminated by Zeltharian modifications. What kind of data? Cultural information, I think. Historical records, art, literature. The beacon was designed to preserve their civilization's memory in case of disaster. The beacon had been launched by a species called the Kethmoran, who had been enslaved by the Zaltharians for 800 years. In their final moments, they had tried to save their culture by hiding it in space. When the beacon's contents were translated, they revealed a civilization of philosophers and storytellers who had spent centuries dreaming of freedom. Their last message was a plea for help against their oppressors, transmitted seconds before Project Nightfall erased them from existence. Admiral Lisa Hayes, now in command of Earth's diplomatic corps, struggled with how to handle contact with other galactic powers. Word of humanity's weapon had spread to distant civilizations, creating a mix of fear and respect that made normal relations impossible. "They won't come within 50 light-years of human space," she reported to the Global Council. "The Andromedans have classified us as a Class 9 threat. That's the same level they assign to stellar engineering civilizations." The irony was bitter. Humanity had become the most feared species in the galaxy by accident. Other civilizations whispered stories about the humans who could make entire empires disappear with a single weapon. "What do they want from us?" asked President Santos, now serving her second term in office. "Nothing. They just want us to stay away from them. We've become the monsters that parents use to scare their children." Some human colonies had begun to embrace their fearsome reputation. The outer settlements declared themselves protected by Earth's ultimate weapon, warning other species to avoid human space entirely. But many humans felt sick about being feared rather than respected. Captain Helen Davis led the Deep Space Exploration Service, trying to make peaceful contact with distant civilizations. Her ships carried no weapons and broadcast messages of friendship, but most species fled when they detected human technology. "We found another refugee fleet," she reported from the edge of human space. "Survivors from the Zaltharian Empire who were traveling when the weapon fired. They're afraid to come near us." The refugees were from species that had served the Zaltharians, willingly civilizations that had benefited from the Empire's technology and trade networks. When Project Nightfall fired, their homeworlds had been spared, but they were left alone in a galaxy that no longer made sense. "They're calling it the Great Silence," Davis continued. "That's their name for what we did. They say the galaxy used to be full of voices, and now there are only echoes." The moral weight of the weapon's use had split human society into different camps. Some, led by General Kate Thompson, argued that humanity had made the only choice possible when faced with extinction. "We didn't start that war," Thompson said during a debate at the Global Assembly. "The Zaltharians came to our world and demanded our surrender. When we refused, they began systematically destroying our colonies. We responded with the only weapon that could save us." Others, including many of the younger generation, believed that humanity had become something evil. They pointed to the billions of innocent beings who had died, the civilizations that had been working to overthrow Zaltharian rule, the children who had known nothing about the war. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a philosopher at the University of Luna, led the opposition movement. "Victory in war usually means defeating your enemy's military forces. What we did was eliminate entire species from existence. How is that different from what the Zaltharians threatened to do to us?" The debate raged in universities, government halls, and public forums across human space. Some called for the complete destruction of the quantum weapon technology to ensure it could never be used again. Others argued that humanity needed to keep the weapon as protection against future threats. Dr. Clark had made the decision for them. 3 years after the war, he had destroyed all research related to Project Nightfall and killed himself with a poison that left no trace. His final message was simple: some knowledge is too dangerous for any species to possess. But the galaxy remembered what humanity had done. Trade routes that had existed for millennia remained empty because they passed through human space. Diplomatic missions were canceled when they involved human representatives. Even species that had never heard of the Zaltharians knew to avoid the humans who had brought silence to the stars. Commander Janet Stone now led the Memorial Project, documenting what could be learned about the destroyed civilizations. Her teams worked in former Zaltharian space, creating databases of alien art, literature, and philosophy from whatever fragments they could find. We've identified 43 distinct species that were completely eliminated, she reported to the Global Council. Another dozen were partially affected. The total death toll is estimated at 8 trillion sentient beings. And the number was so large it lost all meaning. 8 trillion lives ended in a single moment to save 8 billion humans. The mathematics of survival were clear, but the moral implications would haunt humanity forever, young Danny Miller, now a senior researcher on the Memorial Project, discovered something that changed how humans understood their place in the galaxy. Deep in the archives of a destroyed Zeltharian research station, he found records of other species the Empire had eliminated over the centuries. They kept detailed records of every genocide they committed, he reported to Stone. 43. Different species over the past 2,000 years. The Zeltharians weren't just conquerors, they were serial destroyers of civilizations. The discovery offered some comfort to those who struggled with humanity's choice. The Zeltharian Empire had been eliminating entire species for millennia. In destroying them, humanity had ended a cycle of genocide that stretched back through galactic history. But it didn't bring back the innocent species that had died alongside their oppressors. The Morden rebels who had dreamed of freedom, the Veltar artists who had crystallized music, the Kethmoran philosophers who had spent centuries writing about peace, all were gone forever. As the 5th anniversary of the Great Silence approached, humanity faced a choice about their future. They could retreat into isolation, avoiding contact with other species to prevent spreading their fearsome reputation, or they could try to build something positive from the empty space they had created. Admiral Morrison made the decision during a meeting of the Exploration Council. We're going to keep exploring. We're G.